Good. I guess it's afternoon now. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Johnson. I'm CEO of RE Journals, and it's a thank you for to all of you for joining us this afternoon for our session, breakout session number 2. This is our property management session. I am going to turn it over to Michael Mulcrone. Did I pronounce that correctly, Michael? Okay, Michael, and you are going to be moderating the panel, so I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to be in the background here, making sure everybody's getting on and everybody can see everything, but people are starting to pile on right now, so I'm going to turn my camera off and mute my screen. But before I do that, real quick, I do want to just share my screen, so if anybody wants to connect up with anyone at all on this panel, once again, in our virtual lobby, you can go to our virtual lobby. You can see Michael's bio and his LinkedIn profile by clicking here, and then you can connect with him or anyone else on the panel. So please do so after the fact if you want to connect up with any of these speakers. But Michael, go ahead. It's all yours. Take it away. We got about 45, 50 minutes, so we can go a little bit past, maybe like 10 after 1 o'clock or so. Thank you.
There you go. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's been a long day, but I have found it extremely interesting. I am not a real estate person. I actually started my career as a police officer, and then I got into association management. So I've been in association management for about 15 years now, and I am currently the executive director of BOMA Suburban Chicago. I've been with BOMA for 5 years, and to jump into this real estate market, this real estate industry has been fascinating. So thank you for joining us. We have the benefit of having gone through all of the other speakers and all the other programs. A lot of the stuff has been that we were going to talk about has been touched on. What we talked about as a panel was that we want to bring some practical solutions, some practical ideas to the area of property management. And for that, we've assembled a very distinguished panel. And so if we could go around the room and introduce ourselves, just talk a little bit about who you are and your company, and then we'll get into some of the questions. So we'll do it alphabetical. So Austin, if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Michael. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Austin Rabine. I'm CEO of the Rabine Group. So we've been around for about 40 years in all kinds of different facility maintenance and management. So we do pavements, asphalt and concrete, roofing, doors and docks, HVAC, snow removal. And then we also have a company called Site that does facility assessments kind of remotely using drones and artificial intelligence and different technology to create condition reports and budgets for property owners and managers. So I'm happy to be here and kind of represent the contractor vendor side.
Thank you. And Bradley, you're up next.
Thank you. My name is Bradley Borowiec. I'm a vice president with Zeller Realty, and I have the pleasure and honor of overseeing the Wrigley Building, a boutique office and retail community on one of the great avenues of the world. And we will be celebrating our centennial this year in September.
Great. Thank you. Bridgette?
Hello, everyone. My name is Bridgette Battle. I work with LJ Sheridan and Company, and I'm the general manager of the Garland Building. And I've been in commercial real estate for over 20 years in different aspects of the business.
Thank you, Bridgette. Carrie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Szarzynski. I am the Director of Management Services at NAI Hiffman. We oversee about 90 million square feet of real estate in the suburban market. And I am I've been in the industry for a little over 25 years, actually, and happy to be here.
Thanks, Carrie. Don, how about you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Don Stewart, Senior Vice President of Property Management and Operations with Inland Commercial. Inland is a well-known Chicago real estate company. Been around for, I think we're in our 52nd year now. And I'm proud to say that I've been with Inland for the last 15 years or so. I oversee our property management for our retail property program, as well as some single tenant office assets and a small portfolio of medical office buildings as well. So in total, my team oversees about 19 million square feet in 46 states. We're about 30 people on my team, and we do all the property management, interfacing with the tenants, and all of our CapEx and tenant build outs and stuff like that. And I'm very happy to be here today on another panel with you guys.
And finally, Ken.
I think let me just point out, it's fascinating that Don had to go 5th with the letter D. So I'll bring up the rest of the alphabet. My name is Ken Verne. I'm with Bridge Development. I oversee the asset management division for our Chicago and Seattle offices right now. Currently, we have over 9 million feet of property, industrial property and cold storage throughout Chicago, and rapidly growing in our Seattle office where we're pushing 1 million square feet already. So excited to be here and happy to be a part of this.
Thank you, everybody. So if you've been paying attention to the webinar at all, you've noticed a certain theme. The theme has been the pandemic. And we do want to address that, but we also want to touch on some other subjects. But the pandemic is critical at this point. Matter of fact, Dr. Dotzor, the very first thing he talked about was COVID hangover. And so we want to get into that. We want to start talking about the pandemic. And Bradley, you had started in our pre-meeting yesterday. You had talked about an acronym that you had created that talks about COVID. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think out of all the uncertainty, I took COVID and I needed to pull something positive out of it. And that was creation of value in distress, because we were in distress. And I think that the value part of that was, what could we bring to our tenant base that they would come back and rely on us when everybody was sent home or stayed at home. We were going into work. We were building sort of game plans, re-entry plans for tenants to teach them how to come back to the building. So it was just a way to have our tenants have a way to connect with us, that they could depend on us when they were forced to stay at home. And that was really the whole key of that, and just building from that, making sure that we were open 100% and we're here for them.
Yeah. And so, for example, give us an example of some of the tenant reentry plans or strategies that you have employed.
Well, every safety COVID measure recommended by CDC, World Health Organization, we made videos, we did 90 pieces of tenant communication newsletters. We built an app with HQO. We updated our amenities while we could to allow more people to come in when they were coming back to space out. And this is all also adding more issue into everything that we're going through with the pandemic, is that there was so much social unrest, and my building was at the epicenter of all of that. So it was even more so showing tenants that we are a safe place to be and to come back to work when you are ready to come back to work. We did everything. It was all of my team, and we built the strategy to make sure that whoever was going to be here, whether they're riding a bike or if they needed extra conference space, we just made it happen.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, again, one of the themes that we've been hearing over and over is communication. Tenants need that communications. And so, Bridgette, you had talked about, again, in the pre-meeting, some of the solutions that you had been working with. You're kind of in a unique situation. You had said yesterday that you're actually at 100% occupancy. Wow.
Yes, I am very blessed. And just a side note where my building is different is I have tenants, but quote unquote, my tenants are owners in the building. So they pretty much own the whole space. So it makes it a little difficult in that aspect. But communication, I think, is huge, because with that being said, they want to feel safer coming into the building. And if they come into the building blindsided, they won't feel comfortable in it. So I think that when you go to the extent of letting them know what you're doing for your cleaning protocols, because that's the main thing. They want to make sure the hall call buttons are clean, or that the doorknobs are cleaned, and how is that done? And we have our cleaning contractor that provides different material that they clean the spaces with to just ensure some safety, as well as letting the owners and the tenants know what we do for guests that are coming into the building. So be it our COVID CDC questionnaires, we do tenants or visitor screenings, and also just letting them know our best practices for social distancing. So when it comes to entering in on the elevators, how many people are allowed on the elevators. And then also just sharing in our newsletters and on our website, different information on what other owners and tenants are doing, such as rotating schedules for cleaning and things of that nature. So, I'm sorry, rotating schedules for their workers. So some people come on Mondays, the other group comes in on Tuesdays, things like that. And so outside of that, also keeping communication going with them on the city's restrictions, the state's restrictions, CDC's restrictions. A lot of times just sending them the actual links makes it easier because no one wants to be swimming on the internet trying to find this information. So I try to provide that to them to make it easier, to help them feel safer and know that we're on their side and we want to try to keep the building safe.
Right. And so, Austin, as a contractor, as a vendor, what communications are you having with property managers? What are you hearing? How are you responding to the property managers?
Yeah, so from a COVID standpoint, I mean, we're kind of communicating out to all of our clients and the property managers and property owners, the steps that we're taking, out in the field, most importantly to them, to kind of prevent any transmission of COVID or anything like that. And obviously we're following CDC guidelines. OSHA has guidelines as well. And then we have a set of our own where, in trucks, our team's wearing masks, out in the field, as long as they're socially distanced, they're not necessarily wearing masks because, working over hot asphalt that might, cause other issues, health issues. But when they have to communicate with a client or anybody from the facility, then they're kind of, they're putting on a mask. They've got wipes in the trucks. Also, at Rabine, our main core value is safety. So we take that very serious and it's important to us. And every one of our crews has a field safety officer who's a designated safety officer for that team. And every morning they have a toolbox talk. So they go through, are you showing any symptoms? Have you been in contact with anybody that's tested positive? And kind of just going through those set of questions as well, just to ensure that, we're being safe for our team and then also for our clients and their tenants.
Great. And so Carrie, when we were talking yesterday, you were talking about, how do you help tenants return to their spaces? And there's a lot of moving parts to this thing. So why don't you talk about that? And then anybody else, feel free to jump in as well. But Carrie?
So absolutely. I think everything that, Bridgette and Bradley said initially, the communication piece that we've talked about, being consistent and confident in that communication, transparent as much as possible, making sure that we're on top of that guideline information. Restrictions have changed. I joked today that we had phases, now we have tiers within the phases. So there's all these different pieces that we have to be on top of and be communicating to our tenants so they know what to expect. But as we head into 2021, I think what we're really looking at is what are they concerned about now? What are they thinking about? It's space planning. Maybe some of the smaller tenants don't have an architect they've worked with. Having those options to give to them, recommendations of vendors we trust that we know that can help them. Also looking at things like the HVAC certifications that are out there now that can help the tenants feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that you've taken these extra proactive steps to look into what you can do to make the building a little bit safer in the situation we're in at the moment. Obviously, the cleaning protocols need to stay the same, but then there's the use of the space. There's the comfort of coming back and making sure that they know you're going to continue to communicate because this is still evolving and it's going to continue to evolve as we head into 2021. So we want to make sure that they know that we're going to stay on top of it, be proactive, and make them aware of any changes and updates we're making.
Right. And so specifically, some of the things we had talked about was HVAC, space planning. Can you talk a little bit about HVAC?
Absolutely. So, back when this all started, everybody really wanted to talk about cleaning, and that was the main priority. And as the CDC came out with more information and as people learned how it spread a little bit more, the HVAC became a big topic. And we spent a lot of time talking to mechanical engineers and to our engineering firms, as well as to our building engineers and to some of our mechanical companies to really investigate. There were a lot of people in the beginning who said, sorry, I just had a little light issue. That said, that we, are going to have, whether it was needlepoint ionization or UV lights or, increased airflow. Obviously, ASHRAE came out and said we needed to increase the outside air intake. We needed to, do some things that were very easy to implement at the time. Check your MERV ratings, look into what you can do from your filters perspective. So what we've learned is that instead of just jumping on each bandwagon, bringing in somebody to really look at the building specifically, how each building operates, what the equipment is like, and what recommendations they would make for that building, because you don't want to go in and increase the MERV filter rating and then do damage to that equipment that is going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's really making sure you're educating your tenants on what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it makes sense for your building and your building equipment.
How about Don or Bradley or Ken, any HVAC recommendations?
I'll defer to you.
Go ahead, Ken.
The industrial sector has a very different approach, only because it's all individualized, warehouses, tenants are in control of their own HVAC maintenance, and you're just working in a totally different environment. So that element of the impact has been very different for us. It's very rare we even have two tenants crossing paths in the exact same space. So we're fortunate from that standpoint that it hasn't become a major focus for us, where it has been for the office or retail users.
Yeah.
And I think I would echo that as well for the retail side of that as well for shopping centers. We have very few shopping centers that have high touch points like, common area restrooms and stuff like that. We're mostly open air shopping centers. So we're a little bit on the outside of that as well, but certainly understanding what our tenants are doing is interesting process throughout all this as well.
I agree with Carrie 1,000% on making sure that you get that continuity of information to the tenants so they understand exactly what it is that they think that they're hearing versus what actually is going to work in a building. And we've been flushing on our building. I think the recommendation is 5 full cycles a day. So that's besides all the MERV, everything else we've been doing all along. And other panels have already said that we've been doing these things all along, just never really sharing with our tenants because it wasn't that important to them. It wasn't a touch point.
Right. And now, of course, they're talking about amenities and how the common areas are going to be more important because people want, they don't want to build out a 60-person conference room. They want you as a building owner to provide that for them. So kind of an interesting change. One of the things that we had talked about too was communication obviously is critical in all of this. Is there anything that you're doing that's unusual or that really connected with the with your tenants that you didn't realize? I mean, we all send out emails, we all send out, is there anything unusual that you're doing to connect with your tenants?
I'll jump in and say we had a lot of personal phone calls. So when tenants were coming to us and, coming to us and saying, we need this checklist filled out, or we need you to answer these questions, we found that it was better to have a conversation. So we were setting up a lot of conference calls, making sure someone on a senior level was on those calls as well to provide some guidance and some direction, to answer questions, to ease their mind. I had some tenants who have national presence who had not talked to any other managers on that level to ask their questions. We found that really made them feel comfortable, really appreciative, and then they felt more educated to go back to their companies, right? Because these are HR people sometimes. They're not facility people. They're not even sure what they're asking. So taking the time to discuss it with them, to really educate them, really gave them the tools to go back and educate their own firm.
And I think that having direct conversations versus going through emails makes it a little more personal to where it doesn't seem as overwhelming when you're giving them all of this information. And when they're listening to you, it's like another human on the phone with you, right? And kind of feel like, okay, they're going through what I'm going through. So now it makes it where they're calming down, they're listening, and then they know how to move forward to make things better for their staff.
I agree.
We did several.
Go ahead, Brad.
We did several town hall Zoom meetings that would have 100 people that we never would have before otherwise. But we did several of those. We walked through everybody with every step We literally took videos that showed how you enter the building, how do you take an elevator, what to expect. So those things are like, we literally grabbed their hand and walked them through baby step by baby step, because we had to realize that even though we've been going to work every day, they had been out of the office for now at this point, you know, it was 3 months, or it was supposed to be a month, and then it was 2 months and 3 months. So we walked them through every single step, everything from PPE, or PPP, but all of that we incorporated in making sure that we were there. We were very transparent, and everybody could hear the same conversation, and their bosses could all be on the same call.
Right.
Yeah, we actually had a BOMA Suburban member who made a CPA available to the tenants in their building when they had questions about PPP. And they found that just that little thing, just that connection, that touch point with their member or with their tenants was such a big deal. And then that's gonna work over that these are gonna be tenants for a lifetime then, you know? So one of the other issues that came up during the earlier programs, and something that I know Ken is pretty passionate about, are taxes. So Ken, why don't you talk a little bit about taxes?
Well, as you heard, I'm sure, on many panels today, the impact of taxes, in particular Cook County, and trying to drive occupancy to our buildings and keep the tenants in place. The Cook County tax conversation has gotten very convoluted, and it's become a challenge for everybody, because if you read the headlines, you'll see an article that talks about that the homeowners are the ones that are bearing this burden. And the reality is it wasn't that the homeowners are bearing this burden. Yes, there is an impact on the homeowners if there's a gap in the budget, but the proportionate amount that these commercial properties are picking up is substantial. And I've had several properties in Cook County that the tax bills have doubled. And yeah, part of our due diligence and our responsibility to our fiduciary responsibility to both the tenants that are occupying the building and the owners we represent is that we are going to appeal them, and that we're not villains for appealing the taxes. And I've sat in the appeal meetings where the school board has a representative there who's saying, how dare you take money from schools? And it's not we're taking money from schools. We're trying to find an equitable way to share these responsibilities so that no one side is overburdened. But the reality is if the taxes on these Cook County properties keep going up, the value of these buildings are going to diminish, because tenants aren't going to be able to, they're still going to only be able to pay a certain amount of total dollars. And the larger chunk that taxes pick up decreases the value of the building, which then subsequently motivates them to slide out of Cook County, because go down the street and save $1.50 in taxes, that adds up. So it has become a very sensitive topic for our properties. It's and the movement's coming. I'm fortunate that I'm through the big tidal wave, because the suburban portions have all already been reassessed, and at least we know what we're facing. But for the Chicago representatives on here, it's you're next, and it is a sensitive topic that we're optimistic that we are going to get some level of relief, and the expectation isn't we go back to super low taxes, but just competitive taxes, so that we've got an opportunity to continue to operate our building, and we're not cutting from the maintenance services that Austin and his team are trying to provide, because we still only have a single pot of money to work with, and if taxes chew up more of it, then there's less of our ability to maintain these buildings and to put flower enhancements or Christmas decorations up. So it's a definite sensitive topic that we're actively working on a daily basis to educate our tenants individually with one-on-one phone calls, and likewise work with our tax representatives.
So what about the rest of you? Have you been affected by the tax, especially in Cook County? Have you been affected by that?
I can
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can really quick just comment on it. So we're obviously not a large property owner. We do own our building in Schaumburg, and we saw the same thing. Our taxes more than doubled this year, and because of that, the value goes down. And as Ken said, we see that as a contractor also, through COVID and these tax issues, that has to come from somewhere. That money has to come from somewhere. And COVID, they start to tighten budgets, and we see that paving sometimes is easy to push off because it's not necessarily a giant pothole that needs to be taken care of right away. It might be some maintenance that it's like, all right, we can push this off to next year. Roofing is a little bit different, where it's sometimes more of an emergency, and if there's a leak, that's got to be fixed. But we're seeing it in a lot of our different businesses. Some are doing better than others. Some have gone down in sales this year. So it all trickles down to the contractors as well.
Yeah. And from my end, it gets really sticky because, again, I'm an office condominium. So all of the 150 owners that I have, they all have 150 bills, real estate tax bills, and they're smaller companies. So when they get hit with the super high Cook County taxes, it is devastating for them. So that's why, again, with the communication, letting them know about the PPP loans and things like that, we've done that just to find ways to assist them in order for them to stay afloat, because when they're here, I'm here. So.
And Ken, you mentioned yesterday that, some of us live in Cook County. We own homes, so it's a double-edged sword for us.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Hey, come out to Kane County. We love it out here.
And I'm just going to add that I think it's definitely the hardest for the suburban Cook County properties right now, because if you're in the suburbs, it's not difficult to go 5 miles and be in a different county and get that benefit. And so trying to keep those buildings occupied, trying to help leasing, get them leased up when you're fighting that battle of a $7 tax rate versus $1 in some areas, it can be really tough. And it's something that, some people are willing to pay, particularly in the city. I think you have people who want the city, and so they're willing to pay that higher tax. A little bit tougher in some of these suburbs.
And as Ken said too, it's a balancing act. So the higher your taxes go, it drives your rent down. So it's that value issue again.
Yeah. And Don, you had talked yesterday in the pre-meeting, we were talking about retail and specifically shopping centers. Talk to us about that segment.
Sure. I think like with most people, back in March when we kind of went into the shutdown, we all kind of thought we'll be shut down for a few weeks and we'll get back to normal. It'd be great working at home for a few weeks. But as time went by, I think we realized that the impact was, fairly serious, and there were a lot of disruptions to our world, and commercial real estate industry was pretty much impacted immediately. As we moved into April, we started to see the real impacts. I think Carrie had mentioned just the personal contact with phone calls. We really didn't have a choice in that. There was so many phone calls coming in from tenants with concerns about being able to pay rent, pay their employees, and of course they're panicked as well because they're shut down and they don't know what necessarily is going to happen in the future. So, it really was an effort to start kind of figuring out how to manage all this. We took a moment and stopped. Said, how do we manage this? How do we track all this? And, we used a few tools here and there. We used Microsoft Teams has been a phenomenal help to us throughout all of this. We've had big collaborative efforts tracking all kinds of information about tenants, whether they're open, whether they're closed, if they're doing just curbside type of services, if they've applied for PPP or SBA type funding and assistance, and what type of rent relief they're looking at. So it's a fully transparent documentation of all that information so that anybody in the company who needs that is able to get to it. So we really kind of had to get our hands around it at first and then start, diving in. So obviously we started tackling, the rent relief requests that were coming in from tenants. And that was a lot of personal phone calls, followed up with emails. We developed sort of a structure as to how we handled those. And we had a letter that we sent back to tenants and asked them to please give us the additional information that we're looking for, like your sales, any additional different type of marketing efforts you're putting forth right now to sort of accommodate the restrictions and the guidelines. And we kind of walked tenants through that process to try and come to some sort of an agreement. We also did a lot of communication with tenants. We put out several publications to tenants with links to the CDC websites and guidelines on how to operate your business, even though we're not integrally involved with those, but just trying to put the information out there and make sure the tenants had the information at their fingertips, because I'm sure they were all overwhelmed as we all were. And also putting out information on the PPP and the SBA funding. as well, just to make sure our tenants were in the know. We kind of took that one step further. We actually used SurveyMonkey a couple times, and very brief surveys so that we knew we would have their attention and get tenants to respond. And we had a really great response to those, but we wanted to make sure that our tenants understood, what is out there for them. So we asked them, do you have an understanding of what is available to you? Do you know where to look for this? Do you feel you have a good handle on this? Do you need assistance with this? Trying to get a feeling of what they need from us, and if there was anything that we could do to help them procure any type of funding. I know some larger, landlords in the industry had, attorneys available to assist walking through that process as well. So it was definitely the rental income was first and foremost for all of us. It just impacts everything. So that's initially at least how we started off the process, and we're still dealing with rent relief requests and
Right.
second rounds of them.
Yeah. And those of you that are online, if you have questions for the panel, you can hit the chat button at the bottom and send us a question, and we'll try to get to those. But Don, you brought up rent relief, rent abatement, all those nasty things. And so, talk to me about what you've been experiencing and how you've dealt with these questions that have come up from your tenants.
Well, our property management team, who really are not normally involved in negotiating day to day, stepped up. So they were involved along with our entire leasing team and our collections team. And we basically assigned each person a group of tenants to start working with. We had to gather all the information. We presented to our real estate committee. We eventually got to a point where we kind of had somewhat of a formula as to what we might accept that maybe didn't need to go through the full process. But that was a pretty big undertaking as we managed through all of that. And, as I mentioned, we're kind of going through round two again. Some tenants who really were banking on the fact that restrictions were going to lift a little bit and they were going to be able to open up or start operating in full capacity hasn't really come to fruition. I negotiated directly with a very large salon owner in the greater Memphis market, 7,000 square feet for a salon and a shopping center. It's a pretty good size. And based on the guidelines, they were not able to operate in their full capacity. So they were only able to operate in a small percentage of their square footage and socially distance at that. So all they could do was, every other chair for hair. So they had all this space, and they normally offered, package salon, events and stuff like that for groups that came in and too, and they just couldn't do it. So we went through one initial round of working with them on a rent abatement agreement, and it just wasn't getting signed, and weeks went by, and we finally got them back to the table again, and they said, we just don't know when this is going to open up for us in order for us to do business. So, we had to talk about realistically what the vaccine meant and all that, and sort of readjust, what we were thinking, to keep them there and operating.
So how about the rest of you? What examples do you have of rent abatement, rent reduction issues you've dealt with?
It's been interesting that I've seen industries that you don't necessarily think about on the regular basis that where the impact has come into play. So it's the lighting supply companies that do the concert lighting, or it's the vendors that are providing all of the dishware for events, or the expo company that they do the setups at all the conventions that are, I'm down the street from the Donald Stevens Convention Center right now, where my office is at. And we moved in here mid-pandemic, and so never actually had to deal with any traffic at all because of that convention center, because it's been closed this entire time. And so it's all these different vendors that have come forward and said, I need help. And you can't argue with them. For a fact that they're, what they're facing is unique compared to, especially in the industrial realm where, we have Amazon as a tenant. So, I watch Amazon pull up to my front door every day. So I know for a fact that they're doing okay, but these smaller operations, it has been a lot of base rent deferral. More often than not, it was deferred rent. It wasn't abatement, but it was, we still need your help. You still have to cover your operating expenses, but we can push off the base rent portion until at least into this year. And now we'll see, someone was John saying round two, what's going to happen? Are people bouncing back enough, or will there be more conversations to be had?
And I'll just add, I think, obviously we have industrial and office as well and retail, but what we found was in the very beginning, it was those couple of companies that you're talking about, the people who are doing events, that events couldn't be done, that you knew that they were struggling. But all of a sudden there was a wave of everybody asking. And so it became everybody preventatively, I think, came forward and said, I need help. And they weren't quite there yet. We had to put a plan in place to say, let's collect those financials, let's look at that information, and let's go to our clients with a package that can say, here's their circumstances, and then the clients can make an educated decision whether or not that tenant really needed the help. Because the reality of the situation is they may not have needed it in April of last year, but maybe a year later they're going to, depending on how their circumstances played out. So we really took each case by case, helped our clients make those decisions, guided them through them where we could, and then worked with the tenants the best we could as well. And again, I think the question of what's happening next, right? We're coming up on a year. I think there are going to be people who have not felt that impact yet that will feel it as we go into 2021. So we'll be going through another round of it, I agree.
It was funny on March 16th, that day when everybody was a stay at home, it was like literally not even 24 hours. We were getting letters and calls saying that they needed 3 months of abatement. And so you're like, hold on, we're just doing this for 2 weeks. So we took that literally case by case, but really what we felt was the most impacted was the restaurants, hospitality, restaurants, especially restaurants with no outdoor dining, especially when it went down to 25% capacity, then no indoor. So that's really what we try to reach out to, because if you don't help even mom and pop or even big institution owners, if you're not going to help them, you're going to have a really hard time reletting that space in the economy that we're in now. So you either work with them or you're going to suffer if you don't. But it is literally case by case, but there's a second wave already starting.
And then you add in specific states who have had additional mandates where they've shut down again for a couple of weeks. Pennsylvania has shut down, I think, 2 or 3 times. So, you've got restaurants who, were trying to survive on curbside and takeout only, finally got to reopen a little bit, maybe had some outside tables, and bam, they got shut down again midsummer. And then it happened again just recently. So, even just trying to gain momentum has been difficult for some of these guys.
Yeah. I had similar experiences in the beginning where everyone just asked for abatement, just off the top, because it just, they can get it and take advantage of that. But we definitely went down the road of financials and things like that and having them prove the need. And then we take that and talk about it with the association to see if that's something that we can move forward with.
Yeah. And Austin, from your perspective, so you're dealing with the property managers in a whole different kind of way. They're getting hit with, they have abatements, they have their own issues collecting money, and now they're coming to you and they're saying, we need to push off that parking lot, or we need to push. In the building I'm in Schaumburg, they only shovel, push snow on half of the parking lot now. And they say, well, this is where you can park. Stay out of that area. So what's from your perspective, how's that relationship with the property managers been?
Yeah, we've definitely had to make some of those kind of like strategic moves with them based on their budgets. So, we've coming into this year, we typically have somewhat of an idea, what our clients are going to spend on pavements or their roofs, and what their capital and maintenance plans look like. And that all completely changed as soon as lockdown went into place and everybody wanted to cut their budgets. So on one hand, it affected us because some of that revenue wasn't coming in, and that the sales were less. But I think it also helped us to build a good relationship with some of our clients, because now we were coming out and we're saying, okay, well, these are the absolute needs that you need to do on your parking lot or your roof. So it kind of helped change that relationship a little bit. And then I think that also the on the site assessment side, this has kind of so we've been doing that for about 3 years, where we've been using drones to fly properties and do facility assessments, condition reports, and budgets. And that it was going really well. We were getting a lot of traction. And then, when this happened, I think that we got even more traction, just because now property managers and owners are wanting to get good visibility on their facility without going out to it. So, you can't travel out to a facility very easily if it's not local. So now we are getting kind of imagery and data on a facility that we're delivering to the property manager, that now they can have, real conversations with the tenant, be looking at the imagery and saying, yep, okay, I see what you're talking about on the exterior of a building, or parking lot, et cetera. So, you know, it's been a challenge, but it's definitely opened up a lot of different opportunities for us as well.
And so for you property managers, what has your relationship changed at all with your vendors, with your contractors, and how have you been handling that?
More of a partnership. Go ahead, Don.
I'm sorry. I was going to say the same thing. It's more of a partnership. We've always tried to develop our vendors to be our eyes and ears on the ground. We have a lot of you know, properties sprinkled from coast to coast, so we don't have, you know, remote offices, you know, in areas where we have density. So we're doing this from Chicago, and we've always tried to use our vendors to be our eyes and ears on the ground, and it really has been much more of a need this year to have them be that presence for us. So, and unfortunately, we've had to pull back on some other services. You know, if we had a grocery anchored shopping center, perhaps we pulled back on, you know, sweeping and portering to a certain degree in parts of the shopping center that weren't open, and then ramped that back up as, you know, tenants started reopening and, you know, restrictions started lifting a little bit here and there. But I'm sure it's taken a toll on them, but we've tried to, you know, include them in the process as much as possible.
Yeah.
But yes, unfortunately, Austin, we've pulled some CapEx projects this year.
Yeah, we get it.
And I would echo the same. I think it's a lot of, you know, partnerships, a lot of transparency. I know we keep using that word, but I think it's an important one, right? Being honest and saying, what do you think? Janitorial companies, for example, they were super helpful in the very beginning of, here I go with my light again, but making sure that we understood what the state requirement was, what the CDC was recommending, what reductions we could make and still meet those requirements of hitting those touch points every 2 hours that the state required. You know, so those partnerships really have been really critical in helping us be successful in this transition.
Yeah. Great. Oh, I was going to say, I'll join in on the partnership side of it, because working with your vendors, especially through these tough times, when we're working so closely together, we come up with different ideas that we didn't think of, because now we're thinking outside of the box, because they want to keep us as their client and we want to keep the building well maintained and efficient. So you come up with different ideas and ways to do things that you didn't think of before, and it's actually cost savings to help us during this time.
Well, and I think it goes both ways too. It goes from you to your tenant, but you to your owners too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Bradley, you were going to say something?
It's just that you have to be fiscally responsible when you're looking at what you're doing. You have to be real about what's actually happening. And some of the decisions that you have to make are hard, and some of them are hurtful. They affect people's lives. When you're furloughing people, it's been a really, really challenging time. But when you think about it, it's something that you have to do with the hope that you'll come back and you'll be able to reinstate those people. And we have, and we've had to, again, go through another, it's sort of like another stage of where, you know, we're planning, hopefully second quarter we'll be back to a little bit more normalcy and we'll be able to bring more people back. But you have to do those things. There's just, when you have 10% of your building coming into the office every single day, when you had 1,200 people, the work isn't there. It just isn't there.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody planned on us becoming social workers.
Right.
But we have to hold people's hands now, and we have to help them work through this thing. So one of the last questions, because we're going to have to probably be wrapping this up quickly. One of the last questions is, what do you feel will be important to property managers in 2021 that wasn't a concern in 2020? So what do you feel will be important to property managers in 2021?
I mean,
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, maybe from my perspective, some of the things that we've been hearing a lot of is just having a better understanding of conditions of facilities. I mean, I think that it's always something that's been important for property managers, but I think that going through 2020, it makes it even more important. So, you know, one of the things, for example, you know, our clients previously, if they had to you know, cut budgets, they would just kind of like do it a little bit arbitrarily. Like they would know the general condition of their properties, but if they have hundreds of properties, sometimes it's kind of tough to understand like how those all rank. So, you know, through getting good data and getting good information and conditions on all of those facilities, now it's very clear, and we can say, okay, you have, you know, $100,000 on these properties that are a 90 and above on the condition scale. Let's, you know, we can push those to next year. So I think just kind of using that data to be able to make better decisions when there are situations like, with the pandemic.
And that was pretty much what I was going to say about budgeting and being really mindful about the projects that you have on your list of things to do, because we all want to be proactive versus reactive. But now I guess the proactive list, you have to put that on the scale of importance and really focus on that budget and communicating again with the owners and the tenants as to what we need to do and make it more severe stuff first. And the other things we'll do as things get better.
Danny Nikita said something in the first, I think, in maybe the second seminar. So there's like all this positivity, all this hope that we're going to be coming back, and that there's this, we're on the edge of, or this burst of, once the pandemic is over or the hangover is over, that there's just going to be this excitement and people are going to want to come together. There's this synergy, there's a co-working aspect that people get out of your colleague. That you get to be with, and maybe it's not 5 days a week, it could be 4 days a week, but besides elevator dispatch or air quality control upgrades, or everything's going to be touchless at some point. Electrostatic, I mean, all of that stuff is already happening, and I think that those are all going to be very welcomed changes.
I think for me, it's going to be continued partnerships with our vendors. Bridgette, I think, said it very well. We have to do just as much with a lot less. And, as we have to be vigilant watching rental streams and collections to make sure that, the money is there to spend. We really did a very deep dive on our 2021 budgets, recognizing that there are things that we need and want to get done, but we also have to temper that to some degree. So there's a pile within our budgets that we're going to budget them, but we're going to see how things are going too. So working with our vendors and really kind of keeping up that relationship will help us, when we all of a sudden have a large lighting expense, what's the best way to fix this? So are we converting to LEDs now? What's the best way to get this done? If we're doing one property in this market, with asphalt, and maybe, a repaving, is it going to be better if we just try and bundle that with something else in the market as well? So really using our valued relationships with vendors to help us try and drive as much efficiency and profit as possible.
I think the biggest challenge in 2021, outside of everything we've just said, which I think is all true, is going to be as people start coming back, we're going to have people who don't think they need masks anymore because they've had, the vaccine. We're going to have people who still want people wearing masks. You're going to have people who don't think they need to social distance anymore. And as that evolves, and it's going to evolve, we're going to have to help our managers navigate that, handle it, with a lot of consideration, but a lot of firmness in some situations, and really help guide that. That's going to be, I think, a really tricky place to be. I think we expected that in 2020, but with the reduced occupancies, it wasn't, there was some of it, but it wasn't quite as much. I think as we get back to an increase in occupancy in common areas, amenity spaces, we're going to really have to navigate how to manage the different expectations of our tenants and their employees as these restrictions change and people feel differently about them.
That's really enforcing etiquette.
Yeah, that's one of the questions that came up at BOMA was, do you have your security officers doing these health checks, and how does that work? And how do you stop somebody from coming in the building that has a temperature of 101?
Right.
And it's just such a tricky issue.
And there's liability there. So there's a lot that needs to be navigated thoughtfully and carefully, and each client may have a different opinion on that answer. So I think that's going to be expected, but a little tricky as we continue to see how it evolves in the coming months.
Yeah. So speaking of liability, so BOMA Suburban Chicago is pushing some legislation down in Springfield. It's called Senate Bill 3989, and it has to do with liability protection for building owners. And so there is some movement at the federal level, but we also want something down in Springfield as well. So again, a little plug for BOMA. We're in Springfield. We're trying to get some protections for our buildings. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Walmart was sued about a month or two ago by an employee who said that he contracted COVID from work.
Wow.
from work. And, that's going to be awfully hard to prove, but we want to try to be a little bit proactive in terms of protecting our members and protecting this industry that employs so many people and creates so much economic opportunities for the community. So as we start to wrap up, what are some lessons learned from 2020? What are you thinking about 2021? Anybody lessons learned?
I don't know. I guess I'll jump in there. I will say one of the lessons I learned is to be patient and be thankful that I'm here, right? And then for me, 2021 is going to be stay present, current, and take it one day at a time. Because if I worry about tomorrow, I may never get there because I'm worried now. And if I worry about yesterday, it's really not going to happen because that day is over. So living in the moment and then taking it one day at a time.
I would say my team, my management team, my company, the support, because we're all in together. We're all devising these plans together. Nobody knew anything, and it was literally listening. And even though we were all faced with the same exact thing going home to our families, we were the ones who were creating these plans to keep people safe. So I was really happy and very, I couldn't believe that my team always wanted to come in and be around and be a really solid part of that decision-making process. So that's not really a lesson learned. It's just something I really appreciate that I look forward to 21.
Yeah. Lessons learned.
Be prepared.
For what? I mean,
Anything. Going into this year, we had unfortunately still too much paper in our process. And, as we were kind of readying things for people to work from home, we were shoving processes, from paper to paperless, up to the last minute. And it has worked out phenomenally, which I'm grateful for. But, I think, being prepared and always reassessing what our processes are and how we're doing our business to see if there's any efficiencies and just try to be prepared. But going into 2021, I really think the theme for me and my team is back to business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think along some similar lines, just never get complacent. I mean, I think that it's going into this year, you would, or last year, you'd have never expected what we were faced with, and it was a challenge, but we learned a lot as a company. Also, I think I was really surprised by how quickly our team was able to adapt to with Microsoft Teams or Zoom meetings and stuff like that. I mean, without this, we're a construction company, so we've got some very old school people on our team, and they picked it up right away and embraced Teams and made sure that their camera was on so we could kind of keep the culture and keep everybody seeing each other. So it was a pleasant surprise.
For me, I would say it's adaptability, and the lesson learned from my 2-year-old who is in daycare and they have to wear a mask the entire day, except when they're eating or napping. And he does it. He does it without question. It's the idea that, you have to be willing to adapt to what life puts in front of you. And the second part is just the value of the personal touch. We all went through it with these one-on-one calls with all of our tenants and the ownership groups and just taking each individual case on a one-by-one basis, but you have to put in the time, pick up the phone, don't hide behind email or text. That the value of the personal touch is still there. And eventually, yes, it'd be lovely to hug everybody and anybody, but for now, it's just finding other ways to stay connected.
I'm taking your pictures. Go ahead.
Being proactive, looking forward and trying to think about what might happen and how we can help people, being honest and consistent in our communication, which we've talked a lot about here, and compassionate, right? This is not a normal time for anybody. And I've said that to our teams, and to our leaders. I think your clients, your tenants, your own employees are all going through something they've never gone through before. And the impact is beyond what you can see. So we have compassion for each other because I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, that's so true. I know for me, it was, initially it was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to be able to work from home. And come to find out, oh my God, I'm working more hours than I've ever worked. And there was this term that came up, or a notion that came up recently in one of my meetings where they were talking about this relentless pressure more so than it's ever been. And you know, you think about the luxury that we have of working from home or working from you know, a remote site, and yet the relentless pressure is still there. And so I think, like all of you are talking about teams and compassion and building those relationships, whether it's with our tenants or whether it's with our vendors or whether it's with our teammates, just so critical, just so absolutely critical. So so one of the things, one of my members said, bring it on. Her term for 2021 is bring it on. So what's going to be your term for 2021?
Okay, I'll jump in again. I'm going to say smile, because you got to do that. That's going to make you internally deal with what you're facing, because at the end of the day, trying to find that happiness in you is what's going to make you get to that next level. And tons of things can go wrong. It's always things going wrong, but just smile and try to work on being positive and happy.
Yeah.
I agree with her. Smile goes a long way. Or we can just channel our inner Dory and just keep swimming.
That's it. And I got one at home too.
One of our teammates this morning was texting back and forth, and you know, we had some good news from a client. He had hashtag 2020 and then WON, so 2021 but WON. So
yeah, I like that.
Okay.
I think the power of hug is really important. I had just put my father into an assisted living home, and then right that next week, and I was so busy moving him that I just left, and I said, I'll be right back. And I went home and I came back and I could only see him through a window. So that I think for all of us, that's affected us immensely.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
I would just say together we're strong, whether it's our teams, whether it's our community and our industry, our vendors, our clients, you know, we're stronger, and we've done a great job getting through to this point, and we'll get through. So just lean on each other and you know, we'll get through it.
I like that.
I know Bridgette mentioned being present. I think that's really an important thing for this year, and a lesson that I know I need to learn, because, you know, just in your own life and in work, you want to knee-jerk react to things. You want to react the way you're used to reacting to certain things. And you really just have to, you know, take a different mindset as we kind of go through this and figure out next steps and how we get back to business. You know, we're going to have to be a little bit innovative, and I think being present for that and trying to figure out what works and, you know, bringing your teams in to collaborate on that is probably the best way to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any other words of wisdom?
All right.
Oh, Jeff.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Any other final last words? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Great panel.
I want to thank all of you, because I had a great time, and I
This is fun.
enjoyed meeting all of you.
Thank
Well,
you, guys.
This was, I tell you what, so I emceed 2 sessions and we had a total of six sessions. I'm voting this was the very best session, and we went extra long. We went like 20 minutes over. Don't tell anybody, it'll be our secret, but it's going to be recorded. But I do want to thank all of you again for participating. And once again, anybody that is watching this at home, in their office, wherever they might be, if they want to connect up with any of these awesome individuals online, go back to our lobby, click on their LinkedIn profile and connect with them. I'm sure they would all love to connect up with you. And then also one final thing before I sign off, this event was free to attend today. We could not have done this without our amazing sponsors. So I'm scrolling through here. If you're hitting our website, please, please, please click on some of the sponsors' websites, see what they do, check them out, reach out to them. They'd probably all love to hear from you. So I'm gonna just scroll down here just so everybody can see all of the sponsors we had. Once again, this event was brought to you today by all of these sponsors. So please take a moment out of your busy schedules to do that. And with that, thank you very much to all of you. You guys killed it. Way to end 2021 Illinois Real Estate Journal. It's hard for me to say 2021 Illinois Real Estate Journal Commercial Real Estate Forecast Summit. Look forward to seeing everybody in person next year. Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.